Hey, and welcome to day 2 of the YFP Wintrer Classic. My name is Vincent, and I'm joined by Infernosis on the desk, and we're pumped to bring you this first quarterfinal matchup. Infernosis, how are you doing this fine afternoon?
I am super excited. I'm doing great. I've gotten a lot of rest, and I'm sure you've done the exact same to bring the energy and bring the pace here for this first matchup.
Of course. And, well, why are we so excited? Well, that's because it's TSM going up against T1, where the only thing they have in common is losing to Tier 3 players on Zero Marksman Silver. I mean, wait, what? Hold on. Back
What?
that up. That shouldn't have happened. Never mind. I'll go back, but
You're right. I should have.
all jokes aside, Infernosis, I'm so ready to kind of see where we go with this. But before we get too deep into the weeds about these teams and what we expect, we do have to thank the team over at YFP for being the ones to put on this fantastic event. And well, this just might be the beginning of a whole bunch of awesome YFP events as well. We've been overwhelmed with the support for the Winter Classic, and well, it wouldn't be here if it weren't for all the amazing sponsors, one of which is Metafy. They're an online platform that allows players to learn from and play with some of the best players around the world. They also allow for one-on-one private coaching sessions with elite coaches. And you can definitely go over there and check out a whole bunch of different games. They have basically every game in their library. There's coaches for everything, even games that I didn't realize you could get coaching in. But Valorant obviously is a big one. Make sure to go over there, see if you want to get involved. And if you do, you can use YFP 25 for 25% discount on your first session over at metafy.gg. Infernosis.
Yeah, speaking of sponsors as well, we have another sponsor, Swipe Mousepads. It's where performance meets fun. They have a large variety of mousepads in multiple colors. They're used by quite a few of the top Valorant pros, and they have multiple different kinds of services that complement your playstyle. And if you really do want to pick up one of these Swipe Mousepads, which I do recommend in the process, so does everyone here at YFP, go to swipemousepads.com and use code SWIPE20 for 20% off your purchase.
That you can. Make sure to check them all out. And again, thanks so much to the sponsors who made this all possible. But let's shift back our focus, Infernosis, to these teams at hand. Two titans in esports, generally speaking, but well, they've had some struggles as of late, as I alluded to in our opening in the Valorant scene. But TSM has had a little bit more struggle in this tournament than T1 have. Where TSM had to go down and win in that lower bracket, essentially, of their group, whereas T1 kind of ran away with it in their own. But once it got to the round of 16, things kind of changed. And you were watching that TSM game against Gen G last night, and there were some things that you were able to pick up. Tell me about it.
Well, much like everyone expected, Wardell still locking in chamber every single time. That's something that we're going to anticipate today as well. But dropping 57 kills and only 27 deaths seems like a very solid statistic to go by, but yet Wardell seemingly a little slow to the transition back to where the plant actually is, especially on the defense, kind of leaving the team to solo out on site, which created another problem for the rest of TSM and the fact that they were a bit hesitant. They didn't really like to play aggressive on the attack nor on the defense. They're a team that likes to play slow and methodical. They like to set things up over time. They prefer lineups when it comes to their attacking plays. It's just an extremely cautious play style, and I think that when you have Wardell being a little bit slower on the take, if he was quicker to it, then maybe that could facilitate a bit more of an aggressive approach for TSM, allowing them to have a full frontal force with all maybe 4 or 5 that's left in the round to actually contend against that post-plant scenario. But beyond their lack of aggression, they also have a couple other players that are able to handle themselves quite well. Corey did phenomenal. He was the second best fragger in that Gen G game, played Jet both times. Expect to see that once again today. Went 37 and 34. Obviously not the massive 30-plus differential we saw for Wardell, but still a very solid one across the board. And Rossi, who carries the team in a lot of ways, went 32 and 29 against Gen G, playing KO, and allows for them to use that suppress and the silence to gather the information and really lead the team into these forward front positions. I predict TSM is going to have a really fun time here against T1.
Well, that's going to be interesting. We'll see if any of that is what we see on these maps, by the way. Icebox is where we're going to be starting. That's TSM's, T1's pick. Haven is going to be TSM's, and we'll out on Ascent, should we need to get there all the way. But an interesting kind of moment here. Neither team have played this Icebox map thus far in this tournament, but, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not very good on it. And well, TSM, they've struggled in the last couple months. That has certainly not been the case for T1. One of their statistical best maps with an 83% win rate over 12 maps played since the first of the year. I'm really thinking that T1 probably going to run away with map number 1. And if they aren't able to, then that does raise some questions for the rest of the series.
I think for the same thing for map 2, the map of Haven, TSM has recently played this just 2 weeks ago against Gaming Giants. They had a really successful map on this one, a really solid scoreline. I loved their transitions on the attack. They really did like to play a split push when it came to going towards C and towards B and Courtyard. And I think that the map of Haven is one that Steel IGLing is going to look at this and say, hey, we know what we need to do on T1. But at the same time, TSM is a roster that just knows what to do, and they have these setups and these lineups, and they're very successful with them. We've seen that time in and time out. So I think Haven will be a bit of a slip map, and I think T1 has a really good chance if they can keep Steel up on the up and up and give that IGLing a chance to go push forward onto the site and set up some of the lineups that we know TSM likes to do with their slower playstyle. But when it comes to the defense and that quick rotation that's available, it's really going to be a game of that A site and how strong that post-plant situation, the retake, is for both defending sides.
Yeah, I think, we've zoomed in just a little bit. Zooming back out, I think that the conversation is Icebox. If T1's able to comfortably pick up Icebox, and they have a great chance of winning the series overall, because both of these two maps, Haven and Ascent, both teams are comfortable on. They've both played quite often, and they've both had some success on. Going back to the struggles that TSM had at the beginning of this tournament, that was over on Bind, and it's been a bit of a rough go on Bind for that TSM roster just in general, but they were also playing a bit of a weird composition that they had never played before either. So there was a lot of caveats, though we chose to ignore those here at the open of the show. It definitely does matter for the long term. So Icebox being map number 1, compositionally, what are we really expecting to see in Infernosis?
Well, I guarantee we're going to see Vipers lock through, and in terms of play for the professional scene, Sage has really not been super popularized for the pick playing on Icebox, but I don't predict that we'll see that here. I guarantee we're still going to see Chamber being picked up by the player of Wardell, probably see that as well being utilized by T1. On the opposite end, we'll see an Astra as well. Teams really kind of struggle without having that utility on the board, both defensively and attacking-wise, to cut off sight lines and transition themselves accordingly. But one of the big key points about playing that Viper on the defense is the proper usage of the toxic screen. There's a few placements that are fairly strong over on the B site when it comes to the defense, but ultimately, if it's even slightly misplaced, it's really easy for an attacking squadron to get outside of yellow and actually outside of green and transition behind yellow and then facilitate an attack onto the site. So keep an eye out for Vipers and Astros. Those are my 2 top agents I think that we'll be seeing, though I wouldn't be shocked if we see a KO as well to actually go forward.
Well, actually, I think I'm a little bit at odds with you there. I think I agree with you on the Viper point. But I would be very, very surprised to see Astra, especially for both sides, because realistically, T1, they love their Sage, and I don't think they're going to be moving away from it. Now, I mean, they definitely could be experimenting with stuff in scrims and everything, and something that we have yet to see. But I still think the Sage is powerful on Icebox. I think that's a key to kind of winning out on that map. It buys you so much time with the attack side, especially. You get the wall down, you can get a plant for free off the back of it. You can also be very powerful in the late round or even in retake scenarios. So the versatility of that wall, I don't think has been overcome. But I do like that you brought up the chamber, because that is an adjustment that we've been seeing recently. What do you think about the chamber kind of taking the place of the jet in some instances? Do you think that that's been a positive swap over, or is the jet still more powerful in a lot of circumstances?
Well, Vincent, I love to call Chamber the second duelist in a duelist lineup. So yes, I think it definitely fits into there quite well. It fits in with 90% of the players that love to play Chamber. The versatility for being able to step in and out of combat safely, being able to be the first person at the front that goes for that opening shot, and still getting back and being able to defend the site. It's extremely powerful. And I don't think Jet is necessarily the end-all be-all duelist necessary for this map. So having Chamber take over that position, I think gives a lot more mobility in terms of defensively, and then having that headhunter and being able to pull out the tour de force on the attack, as well as being able to transition into the defense. It's just too strong of a baseline utility set to kind of I guess, forgive and allow not to be picked up. So, yes, I think Chamber fits into it perfectly, and I think that's a guarantee pick here.
Yeah, I have liked to see that adjustment in particular coming away. I actually think the Reina's still good here, but it's been interesting to occasionally see like a Jet Chamber as well, as sort of a possibility, especially because double operator isn't all that common, but certainly can be powerful when you set that up on both the A side and the B side on Icebox specifically. But I actually think one of the most underrated parts of that chamber kit is the more sentinel-y part of it, the trademark. Those slows, they're big, it feels like. And whilst obviously, you know, you have fast enough reaction time, you can definitely spot them out. It's also down at the floor. You know, it's not at eye level. It's something that you have to adjust your crosshair to get rid of, and that really can be the difference between a kill and getting taken out in a very fast duel. So the trademark, I think, is absolutely something that we have not seen used as effectively as it could be, and as we move forward and people get better with it, I think that that's only going to make Chamber more valuable.
I think there's no way to undervalue what Chamber can bring to the table. But speaking of value as a whole, unfortunately, the players and teams not exactly ready just yet. So we'll take a quick little break before we jump right into map 1. So make sure to stay tuned for more YFP action, because we'll be right back after a short little break.
Well, after a little bit of a break to figure out what server we're going to be playing on, we finally got it figured, and TSM T1 is going to be underway here shortly. We're in the agent selection. Vincent alongside Infernosis here for the commentary. And, well, Infernosis, we talked about what we expected. Let's see what comes through.
Well, one thing that we definitely talked about was the Reina pick still being fairly strong on this map. It looks like Curry will be choosing to do just that. The stage will actually go through for both sides. That's Rossi and YFO doing just that. And of course, we called it Wardell. We'll actually be opting for that chamber. It doesn't look like a Reina will be utilized by TSM. Corey sticking to the Jets so far. May opt to go back out, but so far from here, a fairly standardized lineup for both sides. Probably not a mere composition with the duelist difference between them, but it's not too shocking to see TSM rock Corey with that Jet, as he locked both of that twice on both maps they played against Gen G just yesterday.
Yeah, and well, for the T1 side of things, this is standard fare. It's exactly what we've seen from them the last 5 or 10 times they played on Icebox. And I mean, again, to be fair, it's worked pretty darn well overall. And I wonder if we're going to see Aleko lock in Sky. I think that's what they played last time they played this map, TSM. But like I mentioned before, TSM really not a big fan of Icebox, so they probably are not super happy to be here. But that's the way the pick ban worked, and well, not going to be that Sky. So we're going to be seeing the Sova instead. What do you think, composition-wise? Anybody have the advantage here? I mean, one major difference, of course, that's being the Jet for Corey and Reina for Curry.
I feel like, in terms of post-plant situation, recovering on the defense to go and try to retake, I feel like both sides are strong because they have that Sova. Allows for them to have the information in later stages of the rounds and then act off of it, which is better than Sky is usually, as they're mostly kind of like working in the early stages of an attack. But since the Sky is not in play, and since the only difference that we're seeing is that Reina and Jet, I would argue that Curry could have a bit of an advantage, especially starting off on the attack, as while there's not the same level of swift entry out of these sites, there's a lot of really tight corners you have to work around, and you can send the Leer through those and cut off those sightlines in just enough time to buy your side a little bit of a leeway, to cushion to snap forward onto the side and actually begin to go for that spike plant and force the post-plant situation. So I'd have to give the nod to T1 here with Curry on that Reina, but look out for Corey to be opting for possibly even that double operator composition you talked earlier.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Corey be crucial to TSM already within this tournament. We're going to continue that here, but we are underway with the pistol round. T1 here attacking first. TSM defend, the headhunter in hand. Wardell pushing up into A, or through A more aptly, and actually it's cleared out a massive amount of space. Could get a flank coming on, but see if that is forthcoming. Meanwhile, T1 clear out mid just a little bit, and it's going to be Steel using the Owl drone to find some information. Is not so successful though, but the push certainly is. Corey on the frag, and it's Wardell finally coming in for that flank.
It's exactly what you need in position. Thriver's able to find one. This kind of brings the leeway for T1 as they're separating the distance further. Curry will take the head off Sabrosa. It's making a little bit more space off the top. A 3 versus 3. Plant has not yet gone down, and the recon bolts are continuously being sent. Just trying to gather the necessary information to allow for them to go for that plant and guarantee that there's some safety. But with Wardell still lagging around inside mid, there still is the possibility of a flank, but it looks like T1's going to get a bit aggressive. Echo takes out 2. Massive as he pops the head off Curry and Pony, and it's just YFO able to find the next kill. A 1-on-1 now. Wardell with the headhunter out. Looks to be coming up through the flank of green onto B, but look at the rotation that's come through the defender spot. YFO's going to step all the way over towards the A site, put down this spike, guarantee that they'll have at least a post-plant situation, and it'll come down to a 1-on-1 with the player of Wardell, which they're asking a lot of TSM fans. This one will go in their favor, but YFO is not to be underestimated.
Certainly not. And he actually has a heal, but he hasn't used it. So if he's going to realize that and put that on himself. Meanwhile, Wardell, we got the singular bullet for the headhunter, so he's going to have to utilize a classic or anything else he can find. Looks like Dwifo not actually committing to the heal. Halfway already pulled in Wardell, just holding for a moment, and he's got it. Easy. No chance for Dwifo as he doesn't even peek that angle, giving TSM the pistol round.
It's actually quite interesting to see TSM, especially Wardell, the player that's typically lagging behind, being that last player to engage into a fight, really catching the rear, which was very successful for them in that round, mind you, as they had played through center and managed to collect. But it's weird to see them actually be aggressive in a post-plant situation. We harped on the fact that they were slow. They like to play methodical and set things up first. To just stick it in that point, I guess pros really don't fake, and TSM take round 1. Now it's up to T1 to try and clap back and figure out what can they do to not allow that to happen from this point onward.
A good call, and, well, there's an opening frag that looks very solid. Curry, he's the second on the leaderboard for overall players in this event. McCory doing a good job there. Pick up 1 with the Marshall. Well, it is going to allow entry for the rest of T1 on the site. They have a 4 versus 3. That advantage is currently there, but we see TSM coming in for this retake fast, and this is a great spot from Rossi. He's holding, gonna get the halfway on the defuse. It's almost there, but just barely missed out. Is now down to 2. TSM have to push forward on their own.
It's interesting to see the snake bite employed. It wouldn't have been fast enough, but look at the position that T1 were playing right there. They were utilizing their initial ice wall to actually hold close corner, spraying down and taking advantage of the forced weapons that they picked up earlier. As for some godforsaken reason, TSM got aggressive in towards green, trying to play from garage and get that early frag. They were anticipating T1 to be a little bit behind, and the force does not pay off. They lose out on their bonus round, and now you've got a poor situation for T1 as they have proper weapons. They have a Vandal, 2 Spectres, a Marshall, and a Bulldog, and there's nothing in the hands of TSM besides a Ghost and a Sheriff and that Headhunter in Wardell's pocket.
We do know how deadly that can be. We saw it come to fruition there in the pistol round, but you're right. Fantastic look here for T1. This TSM are the ones on the eco / half bite to somewhat of an investment on their side. Slow and steady for T1. They haven't really committed too much of anywhere, but it's a full rotation for TSM as they have all moved in towards the B area. 7 looking for an entry, just playing passively. But again, T1 really not wanting to give away this advantage that they were able to claw back there in the second round.
Just trying to play the waiting game right now, Vincent. It's just a game of poking and prodding. I call this kind of the transition period of the round. That first 30 seconds, you kind of probe for information. You try to feel out what the defense is playing at and where they're lying. You find nothing or maybe find enough that you don't like that position. You transition across the map. You play in and pivot over towards the opposing side or maybe towards mid to get another angle. And we see that right here. Now working in through this A main side. It looks like the A site will be their avenue of approach. And you can see the Leers now being sent. Slow orb being sent out as well. Elecko's really the only one close enough to maybe fight this one off at first, but I don't think there's any real great way to deny this plant as it goes behind their Sage Ball next to default, and Steel will guarantee a positive position for them, and a post plant will be ensured.
Rifle. This Marshall looking for the frags to go in, but there's Wardell. Headhunter able to find a singular kill, but it's only 1. 7 doing a great job on the chamber, and Steel doubling down. This one left alive there, and Corey unable to connect the headshot. We seal the triple kill, the in-game leader here for T1, doing the damage in the anti-eco. But here we go, Infernosis, it's time. Gun round coming up, and TSM can easily buy back in, and Wardell has that operator. That's what we wanted to see.
It's interesting. Tour de Force is also readily available in the market, but Wardell is going to choose to go for the operator pick. Maybe because if Wardell goes for a peek and loses the fight, Corey can pick it up and work with it. But I don't think Wardell's going to stick with it. I think that the Tour de Force is the right decision here, and we can see that he's in fact just going to save, keeping the Classic there. Still has $4,900 in the pocket and can save that eco for a little bit of a later stage in case we see a bit of a recovery by T1 if they're able to continue to hold on to this one. But from the looks of things, a mid push coming through. Maybe a step to orange, but it looks like they're still up to gain information from that heaven site in mid and try to get themselves an early pick onto Corey because he's starting to get a bit greedy, and there's the first fight between him and Seven. 3 players jump up at the ice wall and Thwifo pounces.
Huge opening there. Corey going down. Seven trying to manufacture something to continue that initial win on the round, but I'm not going to find anything just yet. Though TSM have a lot of information here based on this positioning for Wardell. You know that this A push at least is not coming right this moment, and you can see some rotation from the defense in order to try and gather some further information in the middle area. But whilst that's happening, actually going to be a B-lane here for T1, and a big win there by Bonnie. Able to find one frag, but it's traded by Sabrosa quickly, leaving us in just a 4 versus 3. T1 do find their way onto this B site, though, get the spike planted.
It's a solid position to be in. We've not going to opt to waste anything in terms of utility. Just gets that spike down and now can play for the post plant. 2 players yellow, 2 players working back towards green. They're going to watch their own rear because take a look at Wardell here. Working through the defensive spawn, or sorry, attacker spawn. Can work over towards garage, and the first fight for them is going to go down in just a moment. But Wardell's the player to come up on top. That Tour de Force still ready and available. Uses it to take out Thwifo. From the looks of things, I think we're going to see TSM opt to maybe go for a cheeky bit of a save. They're sending a player over towards A. Still one over in the defender spawn, and Wardell's still going to lag around in mid. They realize there's not a huge chance for them to contend. Save that ego because you still had 4,900 in Wardell's pocket. He can die, but I don't necessarily think that was the smartest decision. But Seven will find the kill anyways, and now everyone for the side of T1 is going to flush towards that defender spawn. And guess what? 2 players quite close. Aleko could have a possibility for a kill. Removes one gun, goes for the second, finds it, and a massive demoralizing loss at the end of that round, but still a round objective win still on T1's side.
Yeah, and I mean, yes, those 2 kills on the backside for Aleko are fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but I will say losing out on the operator. I understand that Wardell's going to have another one here, but it is a lot of money to lose. That being said, got a timeout here, called by TSM, and it seems a little bit maybe on the early side for a timeout, but I do think that it's better to use them early than to get in a position where you sort of kind of have to take a timeout and you are demoralized as such. But either way, a couple of ultimates, by the way, whilst we have this timeout to talk about. The big one is, of course, the Hunter's Fury for either side, but there's a Resurrection available as well for T1. So they could definitely find themselves an aggressive opening, maybe even lose out on trades, and then bring him right back when they push onto the site.
I would like to kind of harp on what you also said for a moment there. It's better too early than too late, right? I've seen too many teams fall victim to doing it when they're just 1 round or 2 rounds away from an ultimate loss. TSM actually utilized a timeout after they won a round on Haven in that game just 2 weeks ago that I had mentioned previously in that pre-vamp phase when we were getting the game ready to go. They used it after winning a round at that halftime switch because they still wanted to kind of stop the swing potential of the opposing side and try to continue things in their favor. And I think right now that's a smart decision as Teemo was starting to get stuff behind them and starting to lead the pace, swinging things further and further for them, and just stopping that and putting a little bit of a damper in terms of tempo was the right decision to make.
100%. We're back underway, and it looks like we're seeing a lot of early aggression towards A, but that's cut almost immediately by T1 as they head back over towards the B area. Nothing found just yet, though. We're just about a minute left here on this round. Rossi yet to find a frag just yet. Here comes the Hunter's Fury and the Bladestorm, by the way, off the collection of an ult orb. It's going to be Aleko who finds Steel, but Steel's brought back instantaneously, courtesy of the resurrection we were just talking about.
It's an expensive ultimate to expend this early in the round, but I think also the right decision. It looks like a bait and switch from T1 is they'll send 2 over to work through mid, kind of split themselves and try to find a better default in the early stages, but there's still a possibility to pivot over. But take a look. You've got a player defending top of mid. Could be a dangerous spot to go through. Elecko on the opposing side has that sight line. Steel's trying to work in from tube. Could be an option. We saw that in round 1 from T1 of them taking control of kitchen and working down hall to try to get onto the B site, but it's cut down swiftly. Elecko finding a nice shot actually through the smoke, takes the head off Steel, and that's a player advantage now favoring TSM, and this is when T1 has to start to dedicate. They'll send the slow orb out, the Leers being popped out as well, trying to give themselves the space to put this plant on site, but another player, Corey with the Blade Storm, finding 2, make it 3, and has devastated T1. Just 1 player left standing, and they're nowhere near. It's Pony trying to work in from Orange, able to cut down 1, but there's just no time for the plant. It's all said and done, but Corey will collect for the 4K, a devastating round as TSM find their second.
Fantastic work right there by Corey. I mean, we talked about one of the win conditions for TSM in general is for Corey to be online, and that is one way to get online. He's got 4 kills in the round, throwing a spanner in the works of the T1 strategy. It was a couple of heavy ultimates being utilized there by TSM, but it's to great effect, right? They not only find the kill, bait out the res as well with Hunter's Fury, but then it's, of course, Corey quad with the Blade Storm. So now T1 still with weapons in hand to try and manufacture themselves an opening. And they've done just that. 7 with a shutdown towards Wardell.
Mick mentioned this last time in the TSM versus Genji Yam. It's fine to be aggressive. In fact, we wanted TSM to be aggressive. But just like he said, being aggressive a little bit does not mean rush through to the attacker spawn on the defense. That's what Wardell does, trying to work from tube, finding an opening kill. Yeah, it would have been massive for a side, but unfortunately, you just bleed away your most important player for the later stage of the round, and a player that can absolutely hold strong, steadfastly, with the ability to transition away safely after a very vicarious first fight.
Look at this.
But Elecko with a shock dart. This one doesn't really do too much in the process. A little bit of armor off the top, but Rossi from inside tube of kitchen takes down Ponies of Rosa, finding themselves 1 as well. Refragged back by 7. 7 will find their 3rd onto Corey, dropped by Rossi finally, and a 2v1, just 3 foe left standing. Now working from the attacker spawn, has an outlook towards mid, but will deny the resurrection as it's attempted, brocking it once again to a 2-on-1.
30 seconds left.
It's nice to deny the res there, but the heal does come through. It's still 1-on-2. Ifo looking for it, but it's a nice off angle by Elecko, putting TSM back on the map as they've got a tied game 3-3. And let's go back to the beginning of that round, right? Opening pick comes through, very nicely found by 7, and it was great, you know, well placed. But then T1, they got caught in the backside of the tube right there, and that's just brutal. Got hit with the slow orb. What a great timing, and I honestly don't know how that shock dart didn't find any damage at all. It looked like it was on point, and it was a great idea coming through from Lego, but it just didn't work. And TSM though do still find the round, and off the back of that, you gotta think. Okay, so mid control has been a bit hit or miss for T1. What's the next plan of action? We already see the tour de force has been pulled out, and well, this is a T1 timeout as well, so they're certainly thinking about what they can do.
Vincent, I think the right strategy for them would be just to be a little bit more patient when it comes to pushing through these sites. B is an objective that once you gain enough information, whether your player's in mid, if they go through tube, taking an owl drone and sending it through to the B site, once you've gathered that information, then you can start to push off of it, especially with the Reyna that they're bringing. Those Leers being sent out, as well as the toxic screens and poison clouds, all of those are great ways to cut sight lines. But beyond that, T1 really only have a strong push when it comes to that B site if they're able to get an opening pick and give themselves that man count. And they've been struggling with that fairly early. I know that Wardell dropped first in that last round, but T1 still didn't really have the necessary information to push beyond it, and the defense on the B site was very strong, denying anything that T1 were attempting. But you see it here, Tour de Force is in fact out, and it looks like they'll split up. They're going to have their Reyna go all the way over towards the A site, attempt to gather the necessary information. I'm expecting we do see a transition over to A.
I like Corey's position here. Trying to play around the owl drone, but of course the toxic screen does fall at the wrong time. Follow up though, Going for the frags. Corey, how has he not been fragged out here? Corey with the double kill. His 7 does find 1 frag with the tour de force, but it's not enough. TSM with the advantage. Now looking to push that advantage further, though. T1 left in an interesting spot, liking the ult orb as well. So you can see it. Viper's Pit might be a way back into this round for T1, but they're going to have to get on the site. And there's a wild Wardell sitting in front of them potentially, but as I'm speaking, Curry on the flank has found 2 players, and that's going to bar the rotation away from B and into A.
I think they're trying to step through mid. They've gained control. They found 2 kills. They can essentially guarantee that no one from TSM is going to continue to play that angle, at least for now. But Corey has moved over towards Orange. He's going to jump up through Kitchen. This is where this next fight's going to go forward, as Corey's in a great spot to cut down 1. Does just that. Sprays for the second. Does not be allowed, as Steel finds the kill instead, making this one a 1-on-2. TSM a player down, but can still hold strong, as Wardell's playing with the operator up above. Drops down, gets the shot onto Steel afterwards, but the plant has already been guaranteed. Now sticking it to half. Wardell will seemingly hop off afterwards. He'll do just that. Here's the footsteps of Pony in a very dangerous spot, but has the better weapon. He will finish the job quite swiftly with a headshot kill onto Wardell. T1 will take their next round win.
And let's take a look at what happened right there. A fantastic start here for Corey. And again, I talked about it before. I'll talk about it one more time. Corey getting started early is crucial for TSM, and that's a nice spray transfer. It was unfortunate that it ultimately did not net them a victory, but hey, it doesn't always work out in their favor, and you can see TSM struggling a little bit on the purchase. Corey, of course, really close to a Blade Storm, so I'm assuming we're going to be seeing him go for the early orb and the Headhunter up for the Wardell side of things. It's going to be another weapon not necessarily needed.
It's a good thing for TSM to get that ult orb, get Corey's ultimate, the Blade Storm, online, and not lose a player in the process. Too many times you see a team like T1 will still play that aggressively and go for that kill to deny the orb. Not really doing that this time around. Combo with the Toxic Screen just kind of guarantees it, and it was T1's own Toxic Screen that kind of cut that sightline, but you can see them jump peeking out towards the opposing side of garage towards that elbow, and unfortunately not enough information was gathered. Corey's still working on top of yellow, and Blade Storm's down 7. The chamber for T1 off the board, and that could be very troubling as the rest of this round progresses. They don't have a great player to peek forward and have that safety.
Really back and forth here in the early stages of Icebox. Pick of T1 on this best of 3. Corey's looking for more, and now this Toxic Screen is going to allow for Pony to get into a good spot. But Corey seems to have at least a general idea of this possibility. Also, Leko spotted over in middle. And the Viper's Pit over at A is already been denying the entry here for T1. And it's sort of an interesting situation because you got the Viper's Pit at A, and then you have the Blade Storm of Corey at B. And Corey, meanwhile, has found yet another frag. Curry losing the duel onto Rossi, who's been patient in towards the middle area. And T1 now with 2 players left alive. I mean, save seems like the obvious answer. You can see that this position for Dwifo is a little bit interesting. He's very much between a rock and a hard place with so many defenders coming in his way. And he's going to be taken out too by the opposing Sage.
Only one to escape in that round, Steel with the operator. And yeah, it's a very expensive weapon to lose, so make sure to hold on to that one. But it's quite unfortunate that Dwifo does not manage to keep alive. They would have another rifle in their hands, another possibility to buy for their teammate. But it doesn't seem to be the case. T1 now in a very bad spot. They may try to force a round to give some supplementary help in terms of rifles and weapons to that operator that now 7 is wielding at this point in time. And you can see that with a Frenzy in the hands of Curry. They'll bring out the Sheriff with Steel. We've seen him drop that a couple times already here in these a bit more poor position round for T1, but it's still going to drop in favor first for TSM, and they'll go for that ult orb on top of it for Rossi, but Sub Rosa had the cover from behind, got hit in the leg, and still survives.
They got the heal as well for the teammate, so 1 HP becomes mini. And T1 already struggling in the round from an economic standpoint. Now, even less to work with, losing out on their own chamber. Group here towards the A side of things, and this is something we haven't seen. T1 have really not pushed A beyond, a late rotation, and Corey is ready and waiting up in the heaven position, and that's a huge frag, but Curry on the refrag is so quick, finding the kill with the Frenzy, is now there's the opportunity to recover at least 1 weapon. It is going to buy some time, though. The rest of the defense comes forward. It's Wardell in the back of the site. Good for the frag. Smoke goes out, but not before Wardell can find a second.
Talked about having the Silva on the retake for the defense was going to be paramount to them being able to gather the necessary information to dive back onto the site and retake. And that's exactly what we saw right there. Aleko did a great job of throwing the recon bolt out. It caught Curry in a very poor position. A teammate not ready to shoot it as well. It stayed alive for a very long amount of time. And you talked about the trademark. That was a very important factor early in this round and as well early in this game. And that's what we saw right there on top. Trapped, kind of slowed in that position, not able to make the great escape. And that was just one of those small factors that caused T1 to slowly fall apart like wet paper in the later stages of that round. TSM did a fabulous job of retaking that.
Certainly did. And that was, though, an eco round for T1. So it's now going to be the buy. Wardell looking for another aggressive swing. Now, Steel throw out the owl drone. Hopefully spot something out. Actually, he's missed it. And Wardell, meanwhile, on towards Pony. That's brutal. And Wardell, that's just a fantastic look. Going to use the rendezvous to get back in position. And so fast as well. It's a quick move away from the A site for T1 as they do kind of hang out for just a moment, but I don't think they'll ultimately be hitting that site, at least not for the moment.
Transition period of the round. Like I spoke about earlier, you poke towards one, you didn't really find what you wanted to see, so you move elsewhere. But look, they're still sending the spike carrier onto the A site. Steel is still dedicated to this position, and this play has not necessarily worked just yet. Steel needs to be a bit more patient. He's not. He goes for the peak and pays the price. T1 now don't have spike, have lost control over that, and that's the A objective on the other side of the map with really no clue about how to recover from this position. They still have a player over on the B site that can, I guess, make their way over slowly, but from the looks of things, T1 are without a spike and have tons of problems. I think they're just going to save this one and talk about what exactly went wrong. Lack of patience on Steel's parts. Not enough noise was made on the B site, and Aleko was not fooled whatsoever from TSM.
Yeah, it was a relatively small amount of commitment from T1 on that B site in general, but nobody from the defense heard what was going on. They actually, I assume that Steel made some sort of audio cue because I was watching the minimap and it was like a switch was flipped. They were rotating towards B and then TSM all turned around at the same time and ran straight back towards Steel together as a unit. So it was definitely some sort of mistake there from the T1 side, probably Steel in particular, who made that obvious, but either way, got to reset, rethink. It's TSM with a 2-round lead now, though, and T1 have to try and find their way back in, especially considering if you look at the economy, it's just simply not great. There is a couple of players here without the ability to full buy into this coming round, those being Pawnee and Steel. So T1 maybe want to pick up the pace. There's been a lot of slow, methodical rounds, and that is absolutely the sort of strategy that Steel in particular usually likes to play, but sometimes you want to pick up the pace and move a little faster.
Wardell's just in a terrible spot. Gets owl droned out, spotted, is able to shoot it, but the information is still given, and YFO finds the kill. They may have lost one of the process. Seven's brought back into the frame with a resurrection, expending that early, and T1 will have themselves a man advantage. Neither shock darts ringing out. TSM's attempt now to get some damage through this Viper's pit. It cuts down sightlines. AoE is key, but Sub Rosa from the rear able to take out one from that screen side. Looking for more. Aleko tossed another shock dart, but Seven's the player to pounce onto Corey. Sub Rosa finds their second in this retake, takes the head off Thwyfo, but does not last as we now see Rossi, their sage for the TSM side, fallen. Aleko able to pick up the pace. 7 down for the second time in this round. 2 players left for both sides. This retake does not seem like the best of odds. TSM are still trying to think that they're playing in from that A lobby side. No, they're all within Viper's split, playing within the ultimate. Sub Rosa just sprays through, finds the kill into all 2! A 4K to Sub Rosa's name, but the question truly is there enough time left for the defuse? It's coming down to the wire and barely gets it. Defense of TSM get the objective round win off Sub Rosa's back.
So well played there by TSM. So much patience as well. I thought it was all over when Corey falls on the flank, but no, it was such a great move to honestly go for it. Just let the Viper's pit be. Let them play inside the Viper's pit. Don't worry about it. Clear out all the other angles. Play over the top with the on top of the zip, and then go for the frags in through it. And honestly, what a big find from Sub Rosa, able to pick up both the frags inside the pit at the very last moment. So last round of the half coming forward, And it is an instant pull on the Hunter's Fury. Same for the Tour de Force of TSM. T1 certainly wanting to find something here to roll with, as they definitely have lost out on the half.
It's use it or lose it right now, Vincent, right? When you're talking about the last round, you got to use the ultimate or you're just not going to have it. And unfortunately for Steel, maybe holding on to the Hunter's Fury a bit too long. You can't wait for the perfect opportunity. You have to create it and not really given the space to do so. The only ultimate up for T1 is now, unfortunately, 6 feet under, and it's going to be a bad spot. Player disadvantage. Plant will seemingly go down by Thwyfer as they plant on the B site. Not in your typical default position. This one playing in from the orange side of Stead towards mid. But Pony able to find one. Has not died just yet, but TSM able to collect 2 of their own. Leading this one to a 2-player advantage of the defense's favor. Corey with a shorty. Thwyfer off the board. And Rossi, to make matters worse, finds the last kill and reses Corey just to use the resurrection. TSM will have a very solid halftime switch. 8-4 your score.
Very nicely done. Once again, TSM, their retakes have been very, very good. With the exception of very early in this game, they struggled just for maybe the first 2-3 rounds with that, but then something changed, and they've been able to get those retakes relatively often, and not to mention just hold the site from the very beginning. It's been an interesting game though thus far, and I think that T1. One thing that they really struggle with on that attacker side is that they did not have a lot of moments where they were in the advantage. They struggled to manufacture the opening picks, and even when they did, it was pretty much instantly traded back. Not to mention the fact that there's a couple of rounds that just got timed out in the favor of TSM, having to save some weapons. So all things considered, TSM in a great spot. T1 now on the defense, have to turn it around.
Pistol round, not necessarily the most important one, but for T1, this could be a very influential one that swings things in their favor. You get the first, you're typically guaranteed the second, but Vincent, we saw the first half win. That was definitely not the case. TSM taking it, then T1 somehow winning in that bonus. Great job to collect the dropped weapons in the hand of TSM and recover, and I think that's one of the big things we've seen from T1. They adopt new strategies as the round progresses, and I think that's going to be something that assists them a bit more on the defense than it did on the attack.
We'll have to see. Oh, that's a nice find. Wardell actually doesn't hit either of those shots, even though it looked like he was right on target for both of them. Either way, it is TSM planting down the spike. It's Rossi going to heal themselves up. 5 versus 3 now for the retake. Steel, Owl Drone coming out. Found a little bit of information. It's funny. Let's put down the snake bites, but Wardell, what a denial. Yes, there's a trade, but trades at this point aren't good enough. Same for Steel, as Rossi converts 1, 2, and 3 now, the triple kill for the Sage.
Solid pistol round. Let's start to swing things even further in TSM's favor. You called this map out previously, Vincent, in our little, preamble phase when we're talking about the entry to the actual stream. You said T1 was extremely solid on this map, and we've seen glimpses of that success, but TSM have come out guns blazing and have really given no glimpses right now. We're seeing a really lacking force from Steel. I like the IGLing that I'm seeing from T1. They're switching things up and playing fairly slow, but there are times when that patience and that hesitation is shooting themselves in the foot more than it's actually helping them whatsoever. Now with a pistol round loss and having to face off against the SMG force that TSM will bring to the table, the question really is, will they just sprint towards a site and use those SMGs to their advantage? And I think that could be what we see. Slightly slower than maybe a sprint, but it looks like B will be their avenue of approach. They've thrown the toxic screen, and there's 4 players stacked for T1 on A. If they go B, this site is theirs for the taking. Just need to clear 1 single player to get the job done.
Yellow Drone is going to try to find that information. Going to clear out the backside of Yellow. Now, Bush coming forward, though. Corey on the site. Not finding anything just yet. They scaled up quickly. Plant going to be going down, and Rossi has to get interrupted, though, for the time being. Lots of utility there. Now, the denial won't be there for Tony, who's played it well passively on the backside of this site. But now, time for T1 to rotate in. Time to find he can convert this round. Corey, though, in a great spot. He's found the shot through the toxic screen. He's traded by Twyfo. As Curry comes around the corner, T1 keeping themselves alive here. Steel is looking for everything. He's found 2, just 1 more to pick up here with the Sheriff. Wall is gone, and Sabrosa putting down the snake bites. Both of them, in fact, are committed. Steel being the wrong way initially. Sabrosa playing oh so fast with the spikes ticking, and it's been ticking for ages. Halfway gained, but it doesn't matter because Sabrosa is able to close things out for TSM.
Talk about a recovery from Steel. Was apparently aware of my slight aggression towards him at the beginning of that round, but the recovery was extremely well done. But unfortunately for T1, TSM hold on. I think Steel actually could have stuck it in that position. I think you can do a whole half of that spike when you actually have half of it done, sitting inside the snakebite. But I think with the fact that he was lacking armor, it may not have been the most possible thing for him. But nonetheless, T1 on a major deficit. They'll have a rifle buy to go with, but TSM lost a lot of their weapons as well, so they'll bring out rifles. And you take a look, we saw an operator in hands as well. TSM with a high level of aggression. They're not looking to sit back on their haunches for a single round. They're still bringing everything to the table to try and catch T1 off guard.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to that conversation you were talking about, you know, regarding T1 and how they played relatively well on this map thus far this year. TSM, they have not, but they've played it twice and only 2 losses, and the 2 losses that they have, well, they're against very good teams. So you got to keep that in mind as we see TSM push forward into the tube and trying to gain some space. They will do just that. Looks like a B hit is forthcoming as everybody pushes forward. We are going to have Twyfo, though. He's still able to find Sabrosa, so that's the lurker taken out. TSM. And in fact, not even a full commitment onto the site because of all the utility that came through immediately thereafter.
It's a good use, but not being able to pick up the weapon could spell disaster. From the looks of things, T1 still have a fairly solid defensive presence on this objective of B. Steel goes for a swing, comes up on top, not necessarily finding the kill, but still getting a bit of damage off and nothing in return. That will allow for at least some cushion to be made between them and TSM's attack right now. TSM, very one-directional approach. They are single-handedly going towards this B main side. Steel will finally find themselves a kill, opening it up to a little bit of a more prestigious position for them as they'll take out Rossi in the slow rotate. There's no time right now for TSM. They failed on their plant. They're just going to take a step back, hope to save the weapons in hand, but Steel is just dishing out the herd. Finds himself another. Aleko will remove him quickly, but Seven punishes Aleko for swinging right afterwards. The only players to really survive, Corey being one of them. That's a lot of rifles in their hands that have been dropped and no longer available when they were already hurting in terms of credits.
Absolutely. As we see the timeout coming in for TSM, and you're right, they very much just timed themselves out. But it was courtesy of T1's positioning, and that T1 just wasn't peeking him. Right? We saw, for how many seconds did we see the operator there just try to manufacture some picks? All they were doing was just jitter peeking, just committing not to full swing, making the missed shots. TSM couldn't get anything going, and because of that, T1 denying the plant time and time again was ultra effective. And TSM couldn't fight back because, well, they never got aggressive. So forcing TSM into that aggressive look is exactly what T1 were looking to do, and TSM simply said no.
TSM now on the attack once again. We talked about how they were kind of lacking, especially when you lose 4 weapons in your kind of forced round when you have that bonus. Having to reforce and go in with rifle buys, and even an operator, they full scented, they dedicated themselves to that position. They're now starting to feel that pain that comes along with it. It's kind of that slight discomfort. The only person surviving, like we said, Corey, having that rifle still in hand, and he has been very impactful for the TSM side, sitting at 16 and 11. Wardell was very strong on the defense. We saw those slow and methodical plays kind of pay dividends for them as they had the slow transition and pivot onto the site to play for that post plant, which gave them a advantage at that halftime. But Wardell hasn't necessarily been anywhere on the kill feed in the second half, and I think that's something that, if changes, TSM will close out this map 1, but we can already see a Hunter's Fury being utilized by Steel, trying to go off the teammates' pings to try to gather anything and any information or kills, but nothing whatsoever for Steel on the board.
Consistency is key, and Steel really has not been able to find a lot out of that Hunter's Fury this game, and don't think that's been particularly helpful for the scoreline. There's 7, though, on the denial. Corey coming over the top, and Corey looking for more, but can't quite do it. It's going to be 7 on the return fire. 7, so consistent already, 2v4. As T1 are in a pretty good position. look at how split up these TSM players are. One of them there at A, recovering the spike. The other inside of the middle area, and 20's absolutely ready for it. So Sabrosa 1v4 now engaged.
Look at where the players for TSM fell apart. You got a player stepping up, two players actually on the A site, and another player dying up on top of belts. It felt like TSM, before they could get things going and get things started for themselves, they kind of got cut down a little bit too quickly. Crippled, so to say, as their Achilles tendons were snapped early in the round, and their progression as they, I guess, tried to set the tempo but failed. I get it's not the best round for them in terms of, eco, but they got to put something together. A spike plant would pay dividends as it's an extra bit of credits in the pocket, but the recon bolt is probably going to disallow that. Sub Rosa is now forced to take a step back towards elbow. Elecko may get aggressive, but it's three players swinging towards screen. It's 7 to collect. It's his third in that round, and T1 have once again started to collect a spree of rounds in a row, trying to continue to put the pace on TSM's attack.
Well, round's not the only thing they're collecting. They are collecting cash, too. And it's a pretty nice bank being built up. Corey's the only one who's a little bit on the more poor side. Speaking of which, Corey, he's in the same boat. Oh, he's at the top of the leaderboard, 17 and 12 at the moment, and really has been the light here for TSM, consistently finding opening frags, opening picks, and everything like that. This time, though, he's got a stinger. Not perfect of weapons, but certainly effective, especially at close range. Right now, TSM grouping their way over at A. These early engagements have rarely been where we see the final investment go.
Mid-play was very important for TSM on the defense. When the looks of things, T1s are starting to try to pull off that same level of play, but instead of just sending like Wardell straight through mid and trying to play that direction, they're wombo comboing by having Curry and Steel work together in tandem to try to bring something forward, and it works out. Steel's watching through tube, which allows for Curry to step up and find themselves a kill, and that's the Viper off the board for TSM. A really rough start for them, but they'll still manage to get that spike down on the A site and can play for the close plant. One player behind, they're leaving Elecko, and it's seemingly working out as towards the attacker spawn, trying to work in through A main. It's Steel failing, and 7's also going to work in. Now hiding behind ramp. Head is gone, though, as Elecko is very aware. He's just knowing everything he can, but Rossi's going to get hyper-aggressive as the Sage outside through attacker spawn to work through mid, and it does not work out this time around. Corey finally finding themselves a frag. It's with that Stinger, though. Not really the best weapon to work with. Just continuously, a dink goes through. Curry's the one who finds the kill, though. Quickly refragged back by Wardell, and there's no chance for the defuse, but TSM come through and they win their 11th round.
Got a little close there in the backside, but yeah, it was a great play from Elecko all the way around, able to deny any of those three flanking players, and on top of that, initially, or rather at the very end, getting the diffuser as well. So TSM, after a couple of rounds where they struggled, right back in the driver's seat, and it's off the back of really T1 sort of dropping the ball, right? T1, you talked about and praised the fact that they're playing for that mid control, and yeah, that's fair enough. But when they're playing for mid, they've given up the entirety of A, and TSM just waltz right in, take advantage, and run away with the round.
Just seems like they aren't setting themselves up for success as much as they necessarily should be, but trying to hold on. The first frag will drop in T1's favor. 7 has to use the tour de force to do so, but Wardell's also popped their own. Only a classic secondary, so I guess in terms of things getting up close and personal, maybe a little lackluster, but sitting up on top of green will allow for him to have a wide sight line to work towards the site. Corey steps out. Plant is going down by Rossi. Corey gets the kill through the wall onto Thwifo, but 7 is continuously dishing out the hurt, comes from behind and actually gets the tour de force kill back onto the player of Wardell. Corey finding one more. That evens things out for a 3-on-3. Curry's going to be forced to feel and use that Empress, but it's Pony who comes up for the next. A solid round return right now for T1. They still need to remove 2 more players, but time is working ever in the favor of TSM. They just need to play smart, work in tandem to keep these players away from forcing, but Rossi peeks a little bit too aggressively. Try and go for the lineup. You can see the shock dart being sent from over the top, but with full HP and the Empress overhealing, doesn't seem like the best of odds. Elecko will spray down Steel, but this defuse does go through, and T1 wins themselves another round.
Yeah, these T1 rounds, they've tended to come from the position where, you've got a retake, and it's been slow and steady. Walk in, play together, play trades, all that kind of good stuff. That's what we just saw right there. It hasn't been a whole lot of getting opening picks and going for aggression, and that's not the T1 style, especially under Steel. But I do kind of tend to feel that if TSM kind of continue in this similar vein, if they continue to find, around here, around there, which is usually how it's going to work when you're playing for these picks, then ultimately TSM should be able to pull away with this game, and that's a little scary for T1. I feel they need to maybe make some sort of adjustment in order to try and preempt that, but it's so difficult to actually make that change or even determine what it should be.
I feel like right now there's a 1-round buffer for the side of T1. I can give up 1, but even then, that's not where they want to be, because it'll be match point for TSM on T1's map pick. Something that was a shocking polarity from what we talked about previously. But I think that with the pacing we're seeing right now from T1, especially on the defense, they should be setting themselves up well. We saw Shock Dart connect to Wardell, but still the kill is dropping in favor of TSM. Thrifa will just say, hey, we'll bring it right back. Not a huge deal. And Pony will find themselves a kill. Not just an important one to swing the round in the favor of T1, but it also gives the Viper's pit over to Rossi as well. Unfortunately, Rossi now still on the site, trying to play it. Has Resurrection, could bring their player back into the fray, but it's within the toxic Viper's pit. They don't really feel safe enough to do it just yet. Wardell with a headhunter into Pony, removes left. 1. Tied now in a 4-on-4. The Viper's pit still massively in the fray for the TSM side, and it's seemingly not working enough as 7 and Thwipro each collect for 1. Curry knocks down Wardell a peg, and Sub Rosa is going to try and Curry favorite for the player of Curry, and it will hunt them down quite successfully, with Steel finishing things off strong. Another round win for T1, and TSM, it was a thrifty round for them. It's not shocked to see it go that direction.
No, not at all, but they did invest pretty weavily. And, well, we're going to see a T1 timeout this time. Interesting timing here, but let's talk a little bit about that push. You had the Viper's pit down. You had everything kind of in position, but T1 did such a good job of actually finding a bunch of spray through that smoke. In addition to that, their utility usage, talk snake bites, talk the utilization of the shock darts, and well, whilst this time out happening, we're just going to look at a couple of these highlights and what we've been seeing thus far. And I just think it's been so good, those late rounds from T1. If they can continue that, that's precisely how they're going to be able to bring this one back and win this map.
I think it's a matter of pacing for TSM still. We saw them play a bit more aggressively than we did with the Gen G game just yesterday, but at the same time, we've seen a couple times, especially on their defense, that they got hyper-aggressive. They got a little bit too big for their britches and paid the price accordingly as T1 punishes them. And we're seeing that a little bit here. We noted it 2 rounds ago where they lost players very early on their A main push, and when they actually get to site, they didn't have enough safety because of the players that they lost, that it created complications in the later stages of the round when it came to that post-plant scenario. TSM can still find that patience, but also be able to step out safely through these toxic screens while finding a pick, then I think they'll have a much better chance of being able to close this one out fairly quickly. But the matter is, they got to win this next round or the eco is going to be in shambles for them all over again, giving T1 another good chance.
It's a fair point, but see how it goes. It's a nice shock dart, really nice shock dart, as well as the slow orb too, locking that player in place should they have been there. Of course, no one there for now, but it gives the information as well over to Corey that most likely there's nobody close by at the front of this bin. Set up both of these toxic screens over at B. It's sort of the classic setup that we've been used to, but Seven sort of locking these players into position because they are not going to be able to rotate out, at least not through middle. That's okay, as it seems like full push is coming through here. TSM onto the site. Worry looking for something, but he's not going to be able to find it. It's actually Thwipro who, through the toxic screen, able to find another one. That's 7 as well on the follow-up. He's able to dispatch Wardell, who was rotating in through mid, away from that A site where the Viper's pit was located. Now 3v5. TSM struggling once again. Oh, but Sabrosa is pushed up, and Sabrosa with 2. Aleko and Corey chime in. It just leaves 1. Oh my goodness, 7. Are you kidding me? Headhunter in hand, and he's got the 3rd, looking for the quad. 2 bullets in the chamber. But the spike, it's been ticking for a while. Aleko swinging out, missed shot once again, has to try for the stick, and Aleko has the round. TSM hit 12 on the T1 map pick.
What a ending to that round. You look at T1 in that position, and it's just They start off strong, and this is one of the reasons why I say Sage is someone that is, I think, should at the very least start to be a little bit hesitant of a pick when it comes to this site. Yes, you can guarantee a level of safety, but I think teams are too trusting of that ice wall. We saw T1 act quite swiftly once the ice wall goes down. They just sprayed it, removed it quite quickly, and found the kill, which stopped TSM from going from that plant in a really quick fashion to having to slow down a little bit and actually forcing the player of Aleko to go for the spike plant when he should have been playing for the post plant and already having transitioned to a better position. T1 were swift, but they fell apart on site. They got too greedy in their sightline, swung out with not enough intel, and TSM pounces. The recovery was there, but only because of one man. And guess what? That man's already off the board with TSM at match point.
Yeah, that's brutal. What a difficult way to start what could be the last round here on your map. Pick is now gonna have to figure out a way, be a little bit more inventive. T1, TSM grouped up relatively here in the mid area. Wifo not gonna actually hear this rotation, but surely he's gonna be aware sooner rather than later. Now he certainly is there as Pony's gonna fall down to Sabrosa's entry. And that's where Sabrosa can really shine, finding those frags, and was actually the one to pick up 2 crucial frags last round. So 3 left alive here for T1, and it's quickly dispatched there with Curry. Now down to 2.
This is just a very solid round for the side of TSM. Jiggle Peak employed there by YFO, but obviously futile as Wardell will find their second. Hunter's Fury employed, and Wardell will find their third. You saw the attempt there by Aleko to kill Steel with the Hunter's Fury. Not necessary. Steel, last one alive, and well, not for much longer when it comes down to it. A solid map 1 for TSM. The total polar opposite of what you had anticipated and what I had also anticipated. TSM are gunning out for blood, and it's T1 having to curry the favor of the opposing direction now in do or die moments when we head over to map 2.
Yeah, and I guess just, having some practice on this map. Obviously, TSM prepped for it, and this was just impossible. I really think T1 were sort of baited into this pick, with the, hindsight already here, because there's just no way. If you look at where TSM have been over the last couple of months on this map, they lost to 2 very good teams, but it was both losses. And then since the end of January, they've not played it at all. So it looked like a really, really weak spot for TSM. But instead, it turned out to be a secret strength, and that's really allowed for T1 to come into this thing and struggle a whole lot. Now TSM with a big chance to close this in 2, where I thought before it was actually T1 might have had that chance.
And we talked a little bit about Haven, our next up-and-coming map. I mentioned that recently TSM played Haven. They did a really great showcase, taking it about 2 weeks ago, and I got to rewatch that match and really enjoy it prepping for this game today. And it led me to believe that I think TSM is a really good shot on the map of Haven. And seeing them take map 1 leads me to believe that there's got to be a bigger fuel, bigger fire, a bigger drive behind T1, because that map 1 performance was not what we were anticipating, and the result definitely showed that. I think overall, I think they had a really good position. I liked their defaults when it came to defense when they were setting up in terms of their positions, but in terms of the actual post-plant situation, they lost more than they won, and that was their undoing time in and time out, especially when they're already down at halftime.
Yeah, I think, talking of T1, the biggest problem was that attack side, but we're going to have to think a little bit more about that after this break. We're going to get that second map prepped and ready. Once we have that, we'll be right back with you.